The distant wail of a 6-month-old baby pierced through the small wooden cabin as Emma Mitchell stood frozen, clutching the crumpled letter that had just arrived with the post-rider her parents were dead, victims of a cholera outbreak that had ravaged their settlement. And now her 17-year-old self was all that stood between her baby sister Clara and an uncertain fate in an orphanage. Emma's hands trembled as she folded the letter and tucked it into her apron pocket. The year was 1875, and the Montana Territory was unforgiving to those without means, especially young women. Her parents had sent her ahead to establish their new home while they finished selling their farm in Missouri. Now they would never arrive. She lifted Clara from her makeshift crib, bouncing her gently to soothe her cries. "Hush now, little one," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's just us now, but I promise I'll never leave you." Outside, the wind howled against the cabin walls, and Emma knew the firewood wouldn't last another day. The small plot of land her father had purchased sight unseen was proving more difficult to manage than any of them had imagined. The nearest town, Silver Creek, was 10 miles away, and winter was fast approaching. 3 days later, Emma found herself trudging through ankle-deep mud, Clara bundled against her chest as she made her way to town. Their supplies were dwindling, and she needed to find work. The baby had finally fallen asleep after crying most of the night, and Emma's eyes burned from exhaustion. Silver Creek was little more than a main street with a general store, saloon, small church, and a handful of other establishments. As Emma approached, a commotion near the livery stable caught her attention. A man was wrestling with a magnificent black stallion that seemed determined to throw anyone who dared mount it. "Damn you, Thunder," the man shouted as he narrowly avoided a kick that would have shattered his kneecap. His voice carried a hint of Texas drawl, and despite his frustration, there was a gentleness in how he spoke to the animal. "Settle down now, boy." Emma paused, Clara still sleeping against her chest. The man was tall with broad shoulders, sun-bronzed skin, and dark hair that curled at the nape of his neck beneath his wide-brimmed hat. He couldn't be much older than 25, she guessed. When the stallion reared again, Emma gasped loudly enough to draw the man's attention. His eyes, as blue as a summer sky, locked with hers for a moment before the horse yanked at the lead rope, pulling him off balance. Without thinking, Emma stepped forward. "You're frightening him," she called out. "He doesn't understand what you want." The cowboy turned, clearly surprised to hear advice from a young woman with a baby. "Is that right, miss?" There was no mockery in his voice, just curiosity. "My father raised horses," she explained, feeling a sharp pang at the memory. "That stallion is confused, not mean. Look at how his ears are moving. He's trying to listen, but you're sending mixed signals." The man studied her for a moment, then loosened his grip on the rope. "What would you suggest?" Before Emma could respond, Clara woke and began to fuss. The stallion's ears pricked forward at the sound. "Seems your little one has a way with horses too," the cowboy said with a smile. "I'm Wyatt Daniels, by the way." "Emma Mitchell," she replied, "and this is Clara, my sister." Wyatt nodded politely. "Pleasure to meet you both. You're new around here." "Yes," Emma answered, bouncing Clara gently. "Our parents sent me ahead to set up our homestead, but—" She swallowed hard. "They won't be coming now." Understanding dawned in Wyatt's eyes. "I'm mighty sorry to hear that." He glanced at the baby. "So it's just the two of you," Emma nodded, suddenly aware of how vulnerable they must appear. "We'll manage," she said with more confidence than she felt. Wyatt studied her face. "Where's your place?" "The old Peterson claim, about 10 miles north." He whistled low. "That's rough country, especially for someone on their own with a little one." His expression was thoughtful as he secured Thunder to a hitching post. "I run cattle on the Double D, not far from your place, if you need anything." "Thank you, but we'll be fine," Emma replied quickly, pride stiffening her spine despite her desperate circumstances. Wyatt didn't push. "Well, Miss Mitchell, I'm obliged for the horse advice. Maybe you could show me what you meant sometime." "Perhaps," Emma said, adjusting Clara in her arms. "But right now I need to find work. Is there anyone in town who might hire a woman with a baby?" Wyatt frowned. "Not many, I'm afraid." "Silver Creek's a small place." As they spoke, Clara began to cry in earnest. Emma tried to quiet her, but the baby was hungry and they'd been traveling for hours. "When did you last eat?" Wyatt asked suddenly. Emma blushed. Clara had milk this morning. That's not what I asked, he said gently. She couldn't meet his eyes. Yesterday, we're running low on supplies. Wyatt nodded decisively. Come on, Mrs. Hanson at the boarding house serves a decent meal and she might know of work. Emma hesitated, but Clara's cries grew louder and her own stomach gnawed with hunger. All right, she conceded. Thank you. The boarding house was warm and smelled of fresh bread. Mrs. Hanson, a plump widow with kind eyes, took one look at Emma and Clara and immediately ushered them to a table. This child needs feeding, and so do you, she declared, bustling off to the kitchen. Wyatt hung back. Mrs. Hanson's good people. I'll leave you in her capable hands. You're not staying? Emma asked, surprised to find she was disappointed. Got business to attend to, he replied, tipping his hat. But I'll check in on you before I head back to the ranch. True to his word, Wyatt returned as Emma was finishing a hearty stew while balancing Clara on her knee. The baby was contentedly gnawing on a piece of bread. Mrs. Hanson had softened with warm milk. Good news, Wyatt announced. Mrs. Hanson needs help with the cooking and cleaning here, says she can give you room and board plus a small wage. Emma's heart leapt. Really? Mrs. Hanson appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. Yes, child. There's a small room in the back that will fit you and the baby. It's not much, but it's yours if you want it. But what about our homestead? Emma asked, torn between relief and worry. It'll still be there, Wyatt assured her, but winter's coming. You can't be out there alone with a baby. Mr. Daniels has offered to check on your place regularly, Mrs. Hanson added. Come spring, you can decide what to do. Emma looked at Clara, then back at Wyatt. His eyes were kind, and something in them made her believe she could trust him. Thank you, she said finally. We accept. Wyatt's smile brightened his entire face. Good, I'll fetch your things tomorrow. Over the next few months, Emma settled into a routine at the boarding house. The work was hard but satisfying, and Mrs. Hanson proved to be a patient teacher and doting surrogate grandmother to Clara. The baby thrived, growing plump on Mrs. Hanson's rich cooking and charming everyone who stayed at the boarding house with her infectious giggles. Wyatt Daniels became a regular visitor whenever he came to town. He always brought small gifts, a carved wooden rattle for Clara, a ribbon for Emma's hair, news about their homestead. Emma found herself looking forward to his visits more than she cared to admit. One blustery day in January, Wyatt arrived covered in snow, his eyes serious. There's been trouble at your place, he said without preamble. Some squatters moved in. I ran them off, but they damaged the roof. Emma's heart sank. How bad? Bad enough. The snow's coming in, he hesitated. I patched it as best I could, but it needs proper fixing. I can't afford to hire anyone, Emma said, despair washing over her. Wyatt removed his hat, turning it in his hands. I could do it. Got some men at the ranch who could help too. I couldn't ask that of you. You didn't ask, I offered. His eyes met hers. Emma, I know you're planning to go back come spring. If you're set on that, the place needs to be habitable. She studied his face, seeing nothing but genuine concern. Why are you helping us, Wyatt? He looked away, a flush creeping up his neck. Because you needed it, and because. He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. Because I care about what happens to you and Clara. The simple honesty of his words touched something deep inside Emma. For the first time since receiving that terrible letter, she felt less alone. Thank you, she whispered. Wyatt nodded, seeming relieved. I'll get started next week, weather permitting. True to his word, Wyatt and 3 ranch hands spent the next month repairing the cabin. Emma rode out with them when Mrs. Hanson could watch Clara, bringing food and helping where she could. She found herself watching Wyatt as he worked, the way his hands moved confidently with tools, how he laughed with his men but kept them focused, the gentle way he spoke about Clara. One evening, as they were finishing for the day, Emma found Wyatt alone on the cabin porch, staring at the sunset. It's beautiful here, she said, joining him. It is, he agreed. Your father chose well. This valley catches the light just right. Emma felt the familiar ache whenever her parents were mentioned, but it was less sharp now. What was your family like? She asked, realizing she knew little of Wyatt's past. His expression softened. Good people. Pa was tough but fair. Ma taught school before they married. Had 2 brothers, both gone now, one to the war, one to fever. I'm sorry, Wyatt shrugged. It's the way of things out here. You build what you can with what you have left, he glanced at her. Like you're doing with Clara. Sometimes I'm terrified I'll fail her, Emma admitted. You won't, he said with such certainty that she almost believed him. How can you be sure? Because I've watched you these past months, Wyatt replied. You're stronger than you think, Emma Mitchell. The way he said her name made her heart flutter. She looked away, suddenly flustered. We should head back, it'll be dark soon. Wyatt nodded and helped her onto her horse, his hands lingering a moment longer than necessary on her waist. As winter gave way to spring, Emma found herself increasingly torn. The cabin was repaired and improved. Wyatt had added a proper bedroom for Clara and reinforced the walls against the elements. But the thought of living there alone with a now crawling baby seemed daunting, especially after the community she'd found in town, Mrs. Hanson had become like family, teaching Emma not just about running the boarding house, but also about healing herbs and preserving food. Clara had blossomed into a happy, curious child who delighted in the attention from the boarders. And then there was Wyatt, who visited at least weekly, always making time to bounce Clara on his knee while catching Emma up on ranch business. On a warm May afternoon, Emma sat on a blanket outside the boarding house, watching Clara attempt to stand against a bench. Wyatt appeared around the corner, leading his horse, his face breaking into a smile at the sight of them. Look who's getting bigger, he called, tying his horse to the hitching post. Clara squealed with delight, letting go of the bench and promptly falling onto her padded bottom. Undeterred, she began crawling rapidly toward Wyatt. She's been doing that all week, Emma laughed. The moment she sees a man in a hat, she's convinced it's you. Wyatt's expression softened as he scooped Clara up. Is that right, little lady? You looking for old Wyatt? He tossed her gently in the air, making her giggle uncontrollably. Careful, Emma cautioned, though she loved seeing them together. She just ate. Wouldn't be the first time I've been spit up on, Wyatt grinned, settling Clara on his hip with practiced ease. Got something to ask you, Emma. Her heart skipped. Oh, cattle drive starts next week. I'll be gone about a month. He watched her face carefully. Thought maybe when I get back, we could talk about your plans for the summer. My plans, Wyatt nodded. Whether you're moving back to the homestead or, he hesitated. Or if you might consider other arrangements. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. What other arrangements? Before Wyatt could respond, a commotion erupted from the saloon across the street. A man staggered out, clearly drunk despite the early hour, shouting obscenities. Two more followed, and soon a brawl spilled into the street. Wyatt immediately handed Clara back to Emma. Get inside, he ordered, his voice suddenly hard. Emma gathered Clara and the blanket, hurrying toward the boarding house door. From inside, she watched as Wyatt and several other men broke up the fight. He moved with confidence, not throwing punches unnecessarily but firmly separating the combatants. When he returned to the boarding house, there was a cut above his eye. You're hurt, Emma said, reaching for him automatically. It's nothing, he assured her, though he didn't pull away from her touch. Emma fetched her small medical kit and cleaned the cut while Clara played nearby. Wyatt sat perfectly still, his eyes never leaving her face. You never answered my question, he said quietly. You never finished asking it, she countered, applying a dab of salve to the cut. Wyatt caught her hand in his. Emma, I've been thinking about this for months. Your homestead is only 5 miles from my ranch. We could work something out where you keep your land, but maybe. He took a deep breath. Maybe you and Clara could come stay at the Double D, Emma's heart pounded. As what, Wyatt? As my wife, he said simply. If you'd have me. The salve tin slipped from Emma's fingers. Your wife. I love Clara like she was my own, Wyatt continued, words tumbling out now. And I hope you might come to feel for me what I feel for you. And what is that? Emma whispered. Wyatt's eyes were earnest. I love you, Emma Mitchell. Have since that first day when you told me I was frightening my own horse. His smile was tentative. I know it hasn't been that long, and you might need time to. Emma silenced him by placing her fingers against his lips. You don't have to convince me, Wyatt. I've known my own heart for some time now. And what does your heart say? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. That Clara and I would be blessed to join our lives with yours. The joy that spread across Wyatt's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He pulled her close, kissing her with a gentleness that made her eyes sting with tears. Clara chose that moment to crawl over and pull herself up on Wyatt's knee, babbling happily. "I think she approves," Wyatt laughed, lifting the baby into their embrace. 2 days before the cattle drive, Wyatt took Emma and Clara to see the Double D Ranch. The main house was larger than Emma had expected, built of solid logs with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. A colorful garden patch showed signs of recent care, and the outbuildings were well maintained. "It's beautiful," Emma breathed as Wyatt helped her down from the wagon. "It needs a woman's touch," he admitted. "And more laughter. Clara will help with that." As if on cue, Clara pointed at a butterfly floating nearby and squealed with delight. "Who looks after things when you're gone on drives?" Emma asked, curious about the running of such a large operation. "My foreman, Jesse, and his wife Lorna live in that cabin," Wyatt pointed to a smaller building nearby. "They've been with me since I started. Lorna will be glad to have another woman around." Lorna proved to be a cheerful woman in her 40s who immediately took to Emma and Clara. "About time this one settled down," she told Emma with a wink toward Wyatt. "Ranch needs children. Don't go marrying us off before I get back from the drive," Wyatt protested good-naturedly. "Preacher might take offense if you do his job." Emma watched him with Lorna and Jesse, seeing how his men respected him, but also joked easily in his presence. This was a man who had built something solid through hard work and fair dealing. A man who could provide stability for her and Clara, but more importantly, a man who genuinely loved them both. The night before Wyatt left, he came to the boarding house for supper. After they ate, Emma put Clara to bed in their room, then rejoined Wyatt on the small back porch. The spring air was mild, filled with the scent of blooming lilacs that Mrs. Hanson cultivated along the fence. "I'll miss you," Emma admitted. Sitting beside him on the bench, Wyatt took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I'll be thinking of you both every day, and when I get back." He looked into her eyes. "When I get back, I want to marry you right away, no long engagement, unless you want that," he added hastily. Emma shook her head. "No, I don't want to wait either." Relief washed over his face. "Good." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pouch. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment." From the pouch, he withdrew a simple gold ring with a small pearl set in the center. "It was my mother's," he explained. "Pa gave it to me before he died, said to save it for when I found someone special." Tears filled Emma's eyes as Wyatt slid the ring onto her finger. "It's perfect," she whispered. He kissed her then, his lips warm and gentle against hers. Emma wound her arms around his neck, drawing him closer, feeling the solid strength of him and knowing with certainty that this was right. The month Wyatt was gone dragged endlessly for Emma. She threw herself into preparations, sewing new curtains for the ranch house with fabric misses. Hanson helped her select, knitting a small blanket for Clara's new room, and learning to make Wyatt's favorite apple pie under Lorna's tutelage during weekend visits to the Double D. Clara continued to grow and change, pulling herself up more confidently, and babbling a growing vocabulary of sounds that sometimes resembled words. Mama had been her first, followed quickly by a sound suspiciously like "why" whenever Emma showed her the small photograph of Wyatt that he'd given them before leaving. "She misses her papa," Mrs. Hanson observed one evening, then quickly corrected herself. "I mean, she misses Wyatt." "No," Emma said thoughtfully. "You had it right the first time. He'll be her papa in every way that matters." The day Wyatt was due to return, Emma dressed Clara in a new blue dress that matched her eyes and put on her own best gown, a cornflower blue that Wyatt had once said brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes. They waited at the boarding house, where Mrs. Hanson had prepared a special welcome home dinner. When hoofbeats sounded outside, Emma's heart leapt. She lifted Clara and hurried to the window, but her excitement turned to concern when she saw not Wyatt but his foreman Jesse dismounting hurriedly. "Jesse," she called, opening the door. "What's wrong? Where's Wyatt?" Jesse removed his hat, his face grave. "There was trouble on the drive, Miss Emma. Rustlers hit us near the Wyoming border." Emma's blood ran cold. "Wyatt, he's alive," Jesse assured her quickly. "But he took a bullet. He's at the doctor's office now." Emma didn't remember the walk to the doctor's, only that Mrs. Hanson took Clara and insisted she go immediately. She burst into the small clinic to find Wyatt lying on a bed, his face pale but his eyes open. "Emma," he breathed when he saw her, "didn't want you to see me like this." She rushed to his side, taking in the bandage around his shoulder and the bruises on his face. "What happened, rustlers?" he grimaced. "Got careless. Doc says I'll be fine, just need rest." Dr. Barnes, a serious man with spectacles perched on his nose, nodded in confirmation. "The bullet went clean through. He's young and strong, he'll heal. But no riding for at least 2 weeks and no heavy lifting for a month." Emma nearly sagged with relief. "Can I take him home?" The doctor hesitated. "Tomorrow, perhaps. I'd like to watch for fever tonight." "I'm staying with him," Emma declared, her tone brooking no argument. Wyatt's lips quirked into a smile despite his pain. "Told you she was stubborn, Doc." The next day, Emma brought Wyatt to the Double D, where Lorna had prepared the master bedroom. Clara was ecstatic to see him, and despite his injury, Wyatt insisted on holding her while Emma arranged pillows to support his wounded shoulder. "I'm sorry about the wedding," he said as Emma tucked blankets around him. "We'll have to postpone." Emma sat on the edge of the bed, taking his hand. "Actually, I was thinking, what if we don't wait? The preacher could come here." Wyatt's eyes widened. "You want to get married while I'm laid up in bed. I want to be your wife," Emma said simply, "and I want to take care of you properly. Besides," she added with a small smile, "I've already moved most of our things here." Wyatt laughed, then winced as the movement jarred his shoulder. "You're a determined woman, Emma Mitchell. Soon to be Emma Daniels," she corrected. "If you still want that." His expression sobered. "More than anything." 3 days later, with Wyatt propped up in bed and Clara contentedly playing with a wooden horse at the foot of it, Preacher Johnson performed a simple ceremony in the ranch house bedroom. Mrs. Hanson, Jessie, Lorna, and a handful of ranch hands served as witnesses. Emma wore her blue dress with wildflowers in her hair, and Wyatt managed to put on a clean shirt with Jessie's help. "I never imagined getting married in bed," Wyatt murmured as Emma leaned down to kiss her new husband after the preacher pronounced them man and wife. "There will be time for more traditional activities once you're healed," she whispered back, making him laugh despite the pain. That night, after Clara was asleep in her new nursery and the celebration had wound down, Emma sat beside Wyatt on their bed, holding his hand. "Happy?" he asked, studying her face in the lamplight. "More than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. "A year ago, I was terrified alone with a baby, no idea how we would survive, and now—" She looked around at the cozy bedroom, then back to her husband. "Now we have a home, a family." "I always wanted a family," Wyatt admitted. "After losing mine, I threw myself into building the ranch, thinking it would be enough. Then you walked into town with Clara, telling me how to handle my own horse," he grinned, "and suddenly the ranch wasn't enough anymore." Emma leaned down to kiss him softly. "Thank you for loving us. Easiest thing I've ever done," he murmured against her lips. Summer gave way to fall, and Wyatt's shoulder healed completely. The ranch prospered, and so did their small family. Emma turned 19 in October, celebrating with a party that brought the entire community to the Double D. Clara took her first steps the same day, toddling straight into Wyatt's outstretched arms while Emma watched with tears of joy. "She knows her papa," Emma said, leaning against Wyatt's side as he swung Clara up onto his shoulders. "And I know my girls," he replied, wrapping his free arm around Emma's waist. That night, after the guests had gone and Clara was sleeping soundly, Emma and Wyatt sat on the porch swing, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "I have something to tell you," Emma said, her voice both nervous and excited. "Dr. Barnes confirmed it yesterday." Wyatt turned to look at her, a question in his eyes. Emma took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby, next spring." Wyatt's face transformed with wonder. "A baby, our baby?" Emma nodded, laughing at his expression. "Our baby." He gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "I love you, Emma Daniels. I love our family, Clara, this new little one, and any others that might come along." "I love you too," she whispered, resting her head against his chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. "More than I have words to say." Above them, A shooting star streaked across the Montana sky, a fleeting reminder of how quickly life could change. Emma thought of the letter that had arrived just over a year ago, bringing news that had seemed like the end of everything. Instead, it had been the beginning. Clara would grow up knowing love and security. She would have a father in Wyatt who had chosen her, who loved her as his own. And she would have siblings to share the legacy of the Double D, a place that had become more than just a ranch, it had become a true home. As Wyatt's hand caressed her stomach, Emma offered a silent thanks to the parents she had lost. They had raised her to be strong enough to survive that terrible time, to keep Clara safe, and to recognize the good man who had offered them not just help, but his heart. The porch swing creaked gently as Wyatt rocked them back and forth, humming a lullaby he often sang to Clara. Emma closed her eyes, perfectly content in the warmth of his embrace, knowing that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together, a family forged not just by blood, but by choice and by love.